on an annual basis, and that was an important milestone for us, which we have achieved last year. When it comes to profit, I think IndiGo's cost leadership is a very important element in that. So we continue to invest in our customers. We started the loyalty program. We do internationalization. So for sure the revenue focus is important, but in combination with the revenue focus, the focus on our cost leadership is incredibly important too.
You mentioned cost leadership, and I must ask that just very recently, the CEO of a leading American airline said that the budget airline model is dead. There are no budget airfares. What is your view on that?
Countries and markets develop at different stages. The domestic US aviation market cannot be compared to the domestic Indian aviation market. First of all, I would say India is probably the most competitive market in the world. And we still have millions and millions and millions of travelers who travel by train today and want to go by plane. And if you go from the northeast to the southeast of the country, which takes 2 days by train, and now we connect directly from Guwahati to via Delhi to Chennai, I mean that demand is still there. So cost leadership for us is important in order to make sure that we continue to offer affordable fares. But with that, we build on that with the aspirational travel. Where I'd like to make a small clarification, budget travelers, low-cost travelers. Low cost or cost leadership, having low cost, should not be mixed or confused with having a low-cost proposition. I think the product we offer to our customers is really tailor-made. And the fact that now on our long-haul flying international to Manchester and Amsterdam, we start to offer hot meals. A 10-hour flight requires a different service pattern than a 2-hour flight.
That's about service, but when we're talking about affordable airfares, you think IndiGo's airfares are the most affordable, or there's more margin for lower airfares? There's potential there.
The Indian markets, the IndiGo airfares are a reflection of what's the situation in the market. We always look to what are your competitors doing, what are you doing, and in the long run, airfares should be a reflection of the cost, which are out there in order to deliver the product to our customers. We have been seeing a slowly uptick of that cost base, that airfares. And with that, I think we have been able to make sure that some of the global cost increases in terms of supply chain cost, airport cost, overfly cost, have been found a reflection in the airfares as well.
Okay. The IATA AGM happening in Delhi in India is also a very defining moment for Indian aviation, but it also comes at a time when Indian airlines went through uncertain times with airspace closures, airport closures. You had to cancel 170 flights to border airports. Is the vulnerability index gone up? I mean, aviation business has been very vulnerable to external factors, but has the vulnerability index gone up? There are weather-related cancellations, disruptions.
Aviation, by nature, is connected to what's happening on the global stage. And even if one were to be a domestic operator only, the price of fuel is being determined by factors which are globally and not only locally. So I would say every airline is affected by what's happening globally, and then you have the rate of exchange, you have the fuel price. I think in India, the underlying demand and the underlying development of the economy continues to be there. So even when we had to close 11 airports and 170 daily flights for that time frame of 8 days, the rest of the country and the rest of the flights was in fact going on almost business as usual in terms of flights and operations. So from that angle, I think the underlying development of India is clearly supporting us to, despite some of the geopolitical challenges at hand, to continue our growth trajectory.
Have you
Okay.
Closures, airspace closures and airport closures have made to IndiGo?
You can make a short-term calculation and say, we have 170 flights and a flight has this revenue basis and so on. But then, of course, you also don't have the cost of these flights in operation. And in addition, a lot of these travelers basically postpone their travel, so they may come back at a later point in time. So you may recall that last year, the second quarter wasn't great. But then after that, the quarters next, there was an upsurge. So I look more to what's the long-term trajectory of that market and how does it further grow. And I'm pretty confident that that will continue in the way it was also in last year.
You know, there is a concern that your flights to Europe might get impacted if the government goes on to cancel your leasing arrangement with Turkish Airlines. But you also have 787s from Norse coming in, and you have XLRs coming in. So are you expecting that to offset the impact that if such a decision is taken? What is the strategy that you have in place?
Well, I think there's two different elements. One is our flights operating into Turkey, connecting Indian customers to the rest of the world. And that operates within the boundaries and the framework of the air service agreement and is governed by the two countries. And IndiGO is always compliant with whatever happens in terms of government regulations and framework. And if that were to change, we will adjust our flights and schedules accordingly. We have the 787s. The first one is in operation. More are coming by the end of this year. And those we're using for direct flights into Europe, contrary to the flight to Istanbul and then connecting to parts of Europe. So, of course, we keep a close eye on what's happening. We keep a close line with the government in making sure that we continue to be compliant with that regulatory framework. And we will adjust our network accordingly if and so when needed.
Have you heard anything from the government on the leasing arrangement?
You know, we're in constant contact with the government on that. And whenever that is sort of officialized, we'll take those steps to the outside world as well.
Pieter, thank you very much for speaking to CNBC TV 18.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
That was Pieter Elbers, the CEO of IndiGO.
Great time to have the AGM here in Delhi itself. Because India's story is a beautiful story. And actually, this week, India overtook Japan as the fourth largest economy in the world, and now on its way to become the third largest economy in the world, expected by 2027. Obviously, the world's youngest population, leading the fourth industrial revolution, and clearly continued growth of the middle class segment. And we all know that the growing middle class translates in lots and lots of travel and hospitality. And therefore, the 81st IATA AGM, and Rashmi just mentioned it as a small line, back after 4 decades. I think it's a big thing. The last time was 1983. If you go back to aviation in India in 1983, it was clearly a very different India than it is today. And IndiGO has taken immense pride in bringing it back and showcasing to the rest of the world that the India of 2025 is markedly different than the India of 1983. Today, India is the third largest domestic aviation market in the world, and IndiGO is proud to be the airline with world's largest order book in terms of new aircraft. A little over 900 planes on order. There's no single airline in the world with an order book as IndiGO has. And why is it so relevant? Because aviation, at the end of the day, translates as a force for good for the country. And a recent report from IATA, so it's not made by IndiGO, it's made by IATA, has demonstrated that aviation in India contributes in the range of 54 billion to the country's GDP. That represents about 1.5% of the GDP of the nation, providing jobs to 8 million people. That is both direct work at airlines and indirect, whatever is related to handlers, hotels, other businesses right in the vicinity. And there are some other reports basically showcasing that one new aircraft is providing 100 plus new airline jobs, and one job in aviation represents around 6 jobs outside aviation. So that effect for the economy of India is just enormous. There's another report basically saying every rupee you invest in aviation translates into 3.1 rupees for the economy of the country. So seeing where India is and seeing where India goes, basically we still have huge untapped skies. 18% of the world's population resides in India itself. Phrased differently, 1 out of 6 people lives in this huge country, but yet a small part of the world. Increasing demand, and if we compare ourselves with some other nations and looking at the number of seats per capita, we see in fact that India is largely underserved. And that growing middle class will help us to further stimulate demand and to make sure that we continue to grow. Even more so, international. The number of seats per capita internationally, it's about half of what's there in China. So when we look for domestic and you compare India to China, it's about a quarter of the seats per capita in India as compared to China. If we look international, it's about half of the seats which are per capita in China, they are in India. So the opportunity there is enormous. I think another thing important to highlight is the enormous opportunity as an international outbound tourism market. And we'll give you some examples where IndiGO started to operate and suddenly we see enormous rise of international tourism. So I would say there's an unstoppable growth, and whereas some countries and airports are still struggling to come back to levels prior to COVID, I'm proud to say, and proud to share actually, that the Indian market today is expected to be already around 20% larger than the situation we had prior to COVID. Again, take some other parts of the world are kind of just recovering to COVID levels. India this year itself is expected to be around 20% more than the levels before COVID. And then towards 2030, the expectation is India and the Indian aviation market will double in size between today and 2030-ish. So really, we speak about an unstoppable growth and very natural growth given some of the dynamics which I just shared with you. Let me just not only put it in words, but also some sound and images to that. Here we go.
This is India's moment. A bold, new India. A powerhouse that is the world's fastest growing nation.
year. So in just 18 years, we have grown to 118 million customers a year. And as I share internally, Hogaya, done. 2,300 daily flights, 130 destinations, 400 aircraft, and recently IndiGO was the first airline in India operating more than 400 aircraft. Hogaya. And last year, even more impressive, 58 aircraft deliveries to IndiGO. IndiGO was the single largest taker of Airbus planes last year. Each and every week, from the factories in Toulouse and Hamburg, a plane actually was ready to be shipped into India, into IndiGO. So that numbers is really helping us to give rings to the nation and connecting the people and aspirations. I think what's the strength of the airline was it was founded and rooted 18 years back on 3 very simple customer promises: on-time performance, courteous and hassle-free service, and affordable fares. And by now we have added a 4th customer promise to that, which is an unparalleled network. And basically from any point in the nation to any other point in the nation, you can connect either directly or with an intermediate stop. So if you look at that network, and I think this picture just shows it all, look at how the IndiGO network looked 10 years back, and look how the skies have become painted blue. By today, 91 domestic destinations and a little short of 500 direct domestic flights. And we're extremely proud that 90% of India's population lives within 100 kilometers of an IndiGO served airport. So if you think about that, and speaking about giving wings to the nation and connecting people and aspirations, if 90% of India's population, which by the way was 18% of the world population, is living within the range of 100 kilometers of an IndiGO served airport, it means literally we're giving wings to the nation. But it doesn't stop there. Over the last years, we've embarked on a trajectory to become more and more international. Again here, looking 10 years back, you see the picture on the left side of the screen, where basically you see there were a handful of flights from India to the Middle East, and that was pretty much it. And over the past years, we've grown significantly. So today, 10 years down the road, we're operating over 100 international routes to 40 destinations international, connecting into 20 different cities in India. So if you see how we moved from a domestic airline to increasingly an international airline, it's basically an embodiment of a phrase which I actually use quite a lot: India's in a hurry, and so is IndiGO. So if you look to the development of that network, it basically means that we move from not only a strong position in India to also have a strong position globally. And I believe that the geographical position of India would allow us not only to serve the Indian market to and from, but also will help us to become a global aviation hub. And if you just realize that 65% of the world population lives within 5 to 6 hours flying time of India, it basically means we have an enormous opportunity to start building India not only as a point-to-point destination, but also as a great place to connect. And with all the investments being made in infrastructure in the country itself, it means we have the opportunity to connect more and more. And this is the picture of today, and I wouldn't see any reason why there could be great hubs to the left of India and great hubs to the east and the west of India, and why we shouldn't have it here. So the opportunity really is to build that going forward. And therefore, if you expand the horizon with the new planes which we have ordered and the new planes coming in, by the end of this year, we start to get the Airbus XLR getting in. That will extend our range by around 2 hours in terms of flying range. And then clearly with the order of the 350, which we did last year, delivered in 27, we have the opportunity basically to go from India to anywhere in the world. Sometimes I get the question, Pieter, what's the model? Are you an LCC? Are you a network carrier? Are you a legacy? I think if India is home, and soon to be the 3rd largest economy in the world and the largest population in the world, we should just build our own model. And IndiGO has been basically doing that. So a classical low cost doesn't operate from primary airports. We have a leading position in all the primary airports in India. A classical low cost doesn't do code shares. We work with the best and finest airlines in the world. We're proud to have a couple of cargo aircraft. We have high-frequency connections. We operate 15 times a day between Delhi and Bangalore, 20 a day between Delhi and Mumbai. We work a lot for corporates, and clearly with the growing economy in India and a lot of entrepreneurship in many parts of the world and many parts of the country, we see a lot of connections. And then we started our roads into IndiGO Ventures. So the strategic pillars of IndiGO, reassure, develop, and create, are very much there. And when post-COVID, the world was recovering, and I had the pleasure of joining India 3 years ago. So I came here in the summer of 22, and then actually India and the global aviation was recovering from COVID. So what we were doing is bringing India and bringing IndiGO here, making sure that we get back to our original customer promises. Reassure, on-time performance, affordable fares, courteous and hassle-free service. That's the basis. We started a massive investment in digitization and AI. The whole world comes to India to develop its tools and its digital infrastructure. So this is home for us. So for us, we have the great opportunity to develop that. And then last, and certainly not least, we started to build our international network and our IndiGO Stretch and Blue Chip. So that has resulted in a growth of 78 million customers in 2019, just before COVID, to 118 million customers last year. Again, where certain airlines are still struggling to come back to levels prior to COVID, we have moved from 78 million prior to COVID to 118 million actually last year. And that means, and I think that's a great testament to the wonderful people working at IndiGO, we are serving 1 million customers every 3 days. So that in itself shows how we are helping the mobility for the nations. So then if we look back, and we released our annual results 2 weeks back, if we look to the highlights of that last year, we did a lot of network expansion. We moved to a total of 91 domestic destinations and 40 international. For the first time, we crossed, and we're very proud of that, we crossed the $10 billion revenue mark. Again, in 18 years, we spearheaded from nothing really, 1 flight a day to 2,300 flights a day and a $10 billion revenue company. We started 2 new products, IndiGO Stretch and Loyalty. And actually, if you look at that, and the loyalty program, which was launched in November of 24, today already has a customer basis of close to 3 million members. In just a time frame of 6 months, 3 million members have signed up for our loyalty program. So the opportunity for us to combine loyalty with introduction of a business product on the nation's busiest and business routes. So we fly in India about 500 routes. Around 10, we have that product. And it works perfectly well because that's exactly the routes where it's needed. I mentioned already the number of aircraft received, and we're also proud that we are back since the summer of last year in the leading on-time performance chart of the country. And clearly, the wide-body aircraft, which were ordered last year, were a milestone in our performance of last year. And here I would like to give a great compliment and a lot of credit to all my IndiGO colleagues for stepping forward each and every day. So the strong IndiGO culture we're having, and that's really the way to move forward. And a part of that culture is what we call girl power. And that's there right from the start 18 years ago. And we're proud to have the world's highest number of female pilots. 15%, 14.6 to be precise. And with that, obviously, we also have the world's largest number of female pilots flying anywhere in the world are flying with IndiGO. Over 200 people are part, and 200 colleagues are part of the PWD community and working with us as part of their operation. And every time I meet some of those colleagues in different stations in the nations, I'm deeply touched, not only by having them doing the job and serving our customers, but also working together with the colleagues and making sure that they're part of the airline community and part of the society, really. And clearly, when it comes to LGBTQ+, we're also taking a lot of steps to make sure that that's part and an integral part of an inclusive culture we're having. We invested in growing opportunities. And today, on the passenger side, around 45% of all international travel is by Indian operators, 55% is by foreign operators. When you look to the cargo, the difference is even much larger. It's basically almost all on foreign operators and very little on cargo Indian operators. So I think we have a great opportunity to start building on the cargo side as well. And clearly with the 350s, the four 321s we're having today are really helpful to start building that. I will skip the other two for the benefit of time. A lot of work is being done also in the field of sustainability. We're the world's youngest fleet, and everyone knows with the young fleet, we're doing a lot to make sure that our emissions per passengers are really the young ones. I'm extremely proud of all our efforts in the field of corporate social responsibility. And basically, we have concentrated our efforts along two dimensions. One is heritage conservation. And this beautiful dump in Hyderabad, I think, is a great example of the efforts and the initiatives we're taking in the country of building it. And importantly, we collaborate with a lot of NGOs for skill development and basically helping small communities to start their own businesses and start developing from there. And if you fly to 91 cities in the country, the opportunity to help also the very remote parts of the country is just enormous. So that's all today, and clearly IndiGo has the ambition to double by the end of the decade. And our order book, and I already mentioned that, of 900 plus aircraft, means that for the next decade pretty much, we're adding in one plane a week every year. So every week, one plane comes in basically for the decade ahead, which I think is unique in the world. And therefore, the road ahead for IndiGo, and this was shared recently, is basically a 5-year transition towards 2030, where we expect to be a 600 plus aircraft operator. With that, our share of international, which used to be in the mid-teens, then moved to the early 20s. Today, we're a little short of 30%. We'll go up to around 40% of all our operations going to be international. But that's the point on the horizon for 2030. If you see where we are today and where we're heading in FY26, I think we just have another very exciting year ahead for IndiGo and Indian aviation. We will be adding 4 new domestic destinations, Hindon, Adhampur, and of course the 2 new airports in Delhi and Mumbai, who will be opening this year. That will bring the total of domestic destinations to an impressive 95 destinations operated domestically. By the way, I think Hindon and Adhampur go open for sale today itself, so please don't wait too long in making your bookings. That's the domestic side. International, we already have announced Manchester and Amsterdam, which will be starting the operation as from July. And everyone knows we have taken up some 787 aircraft from Norse in anticipation for our Airbus 350s to come in, and we will be looking to start operations into London and Copenhagen by the winter. We have further built our network in Europe, that when the XLR comes in, Athens should come online, and then in Cambodia, Siem Reap would be the next one. And then clearly another 4 destinations in Central Asia will be added. So we will be moving from 40 international destinations to around 50 international destinations in just 1 year from now. That in itself is a tremendous development, and we're obviously very proud. We have announced earlier this week a landmark arrangement with the new Navi Mumbai International Airport by operating, basically not only be the first operator, but also launching international destinations from the new airport in Mumbai. Now, if you look at that, a lot of big cities in the world already today have multiple airports. That wasn't the case in India. So Paris, London, Tokyo, New York, Shanghai, Rio, they all have multiple airports. And we didn't have that situation in India until recently. This year, fortunately, we'll have both Navi Mumbai and Noida in Jewar helping us to start building that system. Another important milestone, we started last year by introducing stretch on our domestic flights. It's resonated very well with our customers. Then we started our wide-body operation into Bangkok, where again we had stretch product on board. Again, very positive customer response. So we've decided to gradually this year also start operations into Bangkok, Singapore, Phuket, and Dubai with our stretch product. So stretch, in that case, will no longer be only domestic, but also have business class on those selected 4 routes, international, operated with our Airbus 321 planes. Clearly, we've built on our partnerships last year. I think most recent one added is Japan Airlines. Japan Airlines putting its code on our domestic flights, and reversely, we will connect to some flights from Japan Airlines in the Asian region connecting to Tokyo. That in itself basically shows if quality airlines, Japan Airlines, are working with an airline, IndiGO, here in India itself, it underlines the importance and the quality being perceived by other countries. Big steps in the field of MRO. If you're an airline with today 400 aircraft and moving to 600 aircraft by 2030, and you have a pool of incredible talent in India and availability of that talent in India, I think India should work to develop its own MRO space. So we have taken the opportunity to start building up. We made the first steps already, and today will announce itself that we further take some opportunity at Bangalore Airport to start building some world-class MRO facilities, basically making sure that we can develop a lot of capabilities in-house in IndiGO and in-house in India itself.